We have Mathew Vincent Menacherry with us, the author of two books, Iraq in the Afternoon and 20 Days. The first book was published in 2009, and after 10 years, he wrote this great piece, 20 Days. As the name suggests, based on Goa, and it speaks about a character named Victor Gabriel, who is an ex-soldier who has been discharged from the army, and as an inspiring writer, he meets up with former girlfriend Anna on the beach in Goa. And the main fact is that Matthew has roots in Kerala. So we have much proud that you are a Malayali. And could you tell us a bit about your roots in Kerala?
Yeah. Thank you, Syke, and thank you everyone for showing up. My wonderful family, thank you. Syke mentioned, you know, I'm a Malayali through and through. Strong roots in Kerala. I stay in Mumbai. I work in Mumbai, but we have a house in Kerala. My entire family is here, and I love coming back here, especially to Calicut, where I have my uncle and aunt and cousin and their family, and it's wonderful to be back here.
Thank you for that. So could you read a kind of portion from here you like?
So what I'd like to do is I'd just like to start with a very short, I'll just read a few sections from my novel Funny Days. The section I'm planning to read from is actually set in Punjab during the height of the insurgency. It's actually a backstory to the novel. The rest of the novel is set in Goa and Mumbai, but this is a very important part where the protagonist actually meets this Punjabi Sikh girl, falls in love, and what happens after. One day, Ranjit, Simar and I decided to walk across to their fields which lay on the outskirts of the village. It was a warm afternoon and Simar suggested that we draw water from the well. My sleeves were rolled up and I was working the rope and pulley when she came up and stood behind me, her breasts pressed against my back as she held me lightly around the waist. Ranjit was sitting some distance away, and if he had noticed anything, he wasn't showing it. He was facing away from us and was skipping pebbles across a stream that bordered their property. I kept one eye on him as I turned towards her. The bucket splashed down into the depths, completely forgotten. Simar slowly disengaged herself from me. She had a coy smile on her face as she moved away, teasing me, daring me to follow. Both of us said nothing, but the meaning was clear. She knew exactly where this was leading. We moved towards a haystack which lay in between their fields. I continued to watch Ranjit, but he didn't seem to be either aware or interested. We reached the haystack and she moved behind it, away from my line of vision. I followed her, but she seemed to have disappeared. It was as corny and predictable as any Yash Raj film, though it didn't seem that way to me. I waited for a while and then made a sudden rush towards my left, and there she stood, crouched over. I slid my hands around her waist and pulled her towards me. She seemed a bit startled, but then began to relax in my arms. I held her for a while until she was comfortable, and then my lips dropped down on hers.
Thank you, Matthew. Okay, the protagonist of your two books, Iraq in the Afternoon and Feni Days, both are from Kerala. Varghese Konikara and Victor Gabriel.
And both are alcoholics. Huh?
Yes. Could you
This is-
tell a bit about that?
Yeah, it's very embarrassing. I mean, they say that you should write about what you know, and when you write books on alcoholics and with titles like Arak in the Afternoon and Feni Days, people just assume that you're an alcoholic, and that's only partly true, not completely. So I just want to.
So no autobiographical elements in that. Okay, so you used many Malayalam words in the novel, and just we can say it, you introduced many of them into English. So would it be a distraction to a foreign reader?
Yeah, actually I was a bit concerned about this because the current publisher is a UK-based company, and I thought that they would want me to rewrite the Malayalam terms. I used the Malayalam terms because I wanted to make it as authentic as possible, give a correct feel of the place and of the protagonist. Luckily for me, I mean, they were absolutely fine with it. I would think that, rather than distract from the reading, it probably would give a more authentic feel about the place, about the people, about the times.
Okay, thank you. And you told me that you have a full-time job. You are the co-owner of a chemical company,
Yeah, my boss is sitting right there, my dad. So.
and you are a part-time writer. So, I mean, can you be a full-time writer? So we'll get.
I'd love to be a full-time writer, but I'd probably starve to death because it doesn't pay the bills. I work very closely with my father and my brother, and it's a lot of fun. You know, I I try and write in my spare time. And I'm not very disciplined about my writing, which is why it takes me a long time to complete my books. And yeah.
Is there any connection with the title of the first novel, Iraq in the Afternoon, and then the next one, Feni Days, both? So, is there any connection?
Actually, both names were suggested by my brother, and so the thing is, my first novel is called Arak in the Afternoon, and which is actually a metaphor for alcoholism, and the protagonist of that is an alcoholic as well. And Arak, നമ്മളുടെ ഈ ചാരായം ഇല്ലേ,
Okay.
is a very potent drink, and the thinking is that if you start drinking chadayam or arak in the afternoon, then you're certified alcoholic.
Drunk,
So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that was the thinking behind the name for the first book. For the second book, Feni Days, the story is set in Goa, and Feni is the drink of choice. And since he was drinking so much of it, I mean, he was in a complete daze, I think, all through the telling of the story,
All right.
which explains the name.
Well, I could see that the protagonist reads works of Charles Bukowski throughout the novel. I mean, sometimes in the chapters. So, is there any particular influence on your writing?
Actually, I was introduced to Charles Bukowski after my first book came out, and I was attending a literary festival in Kovalam. And there was this young British guy who was there as well, and he asked me whether I'd read Bukowski, and he said that, I would probably like him a lot. So he actually gifted me a book called Factotum by Charles Bukowski, and I really liked it because the writing is it's very lean, it's very spare. Uh, he's the kind of person who tries to say a lot with by using just the bare minimum number of words. A lot like Hemingway and other writers of that ilk. And that's something that actually it's a style that appealed to me, and which is why I used it in this book quite extensively.
Okay, well, Matthew, you followed a non-linear narration in the novel Fairy Days. So why did you do that? Could you tell us?
So when you read the book, actually it's set over 3 or 4 different time frames, and also geographical locations. So there's one part of the book which is set in Mumbai, where the protagonist grew up. There's Goa, where he's currently with his girlfriend, trying to see whether they have a future together. There's a backstory which is set in Punjab at the height of the insurgency.
Okay.
There's also another section in Bangalore. So there are 4 different time periods. There are 4 different stories which are kind of interlinked. And I just thought that it would be more interesting, more complex to tell it in a non-linear fashion where the stories overlap and intermix rather than just having a linear storytelling,
Okay.
following a timeline.
Okay. And you described, I was shocked by reading about 2 rapes in the novel, one in Punjab and the other in Goa. So, how did you consider this as a medium? To talk about the general things in India situation so far.
Yeah, I think the one rape and the other attempted rape, it forms a part of the storyline. When I wrote the book, it's not as if I wanted to, make a statement about rape or, the treatment of women in our country. But the fact of the matter is that, this is, it's really terrible the way women are treated in some parts of our country. And, things really need to change. And and things won't just change by hanging the rapists or, policing or things like that. Really there's a cultural issue. Young boys, young girls need to be sensitized that this is a terrible thing and unacceptable, in every which way. Only then things will change.
Okay.
As far as the rapes in the novel, it's a dark subject, but it forms a part of the storyline. It shapes the way the protagonist, Victor Gabriel, is, develops. And I think it's a very intrinsic part of the novel.
Yeah. And about the female characters in the novel, Anna, Simmer, and I can say Jazz. So Anna is in one part. I can feel that. So is a character is incomplete.
It's actually it's strange, you know. I mean, I've I've received uh, feedback to that effect that the character of Anna is not as developed as some of the other characters. That she could be a lot stronger than you know than she is, the way she has been shown in the novel. But and probably, probably that's a fair criticism. But what I'd like to say is that, I was trying to write about ordinary people who were put in extraordinary or sometimes even brutal situations. And to me, it would not ring true if, every character in the novel, every ordinary person in the novel suddenly just metamorphosed into a Superman or a Superwoman and, that kind of thing. They were ordinary people. Some of them reacted in one way, others reacted in other ways. I guess the other thing I'd like to point out about Anna is that, okay, while she might come across as a bit mild, a bit weak, she has so many other qualities which are worth emulating. She's a wonderful person. She's warm, she's gentle, she's giving, she's generous, and maybe she's not as strong as some people wanted her to be, but not everyone is. So,
Thank you, Maddie, for that. So more about Sima in Punjab. So
Simmer, what happened to Simmer, what happened to her family, and all that, is. So while I was writing the book, and before writing the book, I had read very extensively about the insurgency in Punjab, what happened before, what happened after, from both sides, from the side of the Indian government, from the other side, the so-called Sikh extremists. And the biggest tragedy of that time is that innocent people, and not just a few, tens of thousands of innocent people were brutally massacred during the showdown between the Indian government and the extremists.
okay.
And it's very easy to dismiss this as, what's the term now, the that term, this term that they use for war, the casualties of war, collateral damage.
Okay.
But the fact of the matter is that, what I wanted to do is, when you try and tell the story of one family that was directly affected, it makes it more humane and more relatable. And grave injustice was done, and Simmer is just,
Yeah.
just
So it's a sad episode in the
that
novel.
part probably is.
Yeah. And you began the novel with the word ennui, and in the later chapter 36, it had been given way to a kind of feeling of loss. So how could you say, I mean, the first chapter to the 36th chapter, the mental status of the narrator or Victor Gabriel changed?
You're speaking about the term ennui,
Ennui,
right?
yeah.
Right, yeah. So I think that what it does, it kind of it traces the shift in the mindset of the protagonist as the novel progresses. So in the beginning, when he meets his girlfriend in Goa, he's bored, he's listless, he's going through the motions. He's depressed, he's alcoholic, and then this changes because this person has led a very troubled life, and when he sees that he's in danger of losing probably the last thing that meant anything to him, he his entire mindset changes. So that's when ennui gives way to a feeling of loss,
Okay.
which is what you were
Sure.
referring to.
So you wrote about throughout the novel basic human behavior, and there is no kind of deviation from that. I mean, there is not any single unwanted narration in the novel. And I would like to ask about one thing that you are an owner of a chemical company and a full-time businessman. So how did you know about the chemistry of life? So is
I just drank a lot in my spare time, yeah. And certain things just no. Seriously, very seriously. So the thing is, I'm very fortunate because my job allows me to travel a lot, really a lot. So you tend to meet a lot of interesting people all over the world. You listen to their stories. You the thing that you realize is that the human condition is quite similar wherever you go all over the world, and everyone has a story to tell. And if you just learn how to listen, you you could you could learn from and probably use a lot of these stories and create something of your own.
Thank you.
So I would say it helps. Travel always helps. And in my job, I get a chance to travel, meet very interesting people. And, I met a very interesting guy yesterday who's just seated right there. And it was real, it's always nice meeting people, listening to their stories, and, you
Okay,
learn from it.
I think we have 8 minutes more. So thank you, Matthew. So I would like to invite the questions from the audience, and if you could complete this session by asking questions to the author.
How many of your characters in your book are drawn from people you've met in real life?
I'll have to plead the fifth on that. But truthfully, quite a few. But, it's people I grew up with, people I met, stories I heard. The Punjab bit, the section on Punjab was almost all research, because honestly, before writing about it, I hadn't even visited Punjab. But surprisingly, I mean, that's the part of the book people have related to the most. So it's. So I guess.
Thank you.
All right. So I guess. Oh.
All right.
Uh, uh, in my experience, I found it, it's much more easy to describe situations, places, incidents than to describe a character. So to imagine a person, say, fully from and unrelated to somebody whom you know, I mean, that was the meaning of my first question. You can write about a place you've never visited, it is possible. You can do a lot of research. But to imagine a character up from scratch, not based on anything which you have encountered, that's a very, it's almost impossible for me. So that's why I asked the question. What is your take on that?
So, what what I try and do, and I think what other people also try and do when they consciously create a character. So each character is not really a single character. I think each character is a combination of a few people that you know intimately or you have seen in certain situations. You remember how they act in those situations, and you try and reproduce that in your work. So I wouldn't say any one character is. I mean, I'd love to think I'm Victor Gabriel, the protagonist. It wouldn't be true or even wise to claim that. Yes.
Somebody said that all art is actually a portrait of the artist. So,
Then
so,
he would be in
so
jail.
I'm sure there is some Matthew somewhere in
So
the.
if I may paraphrase what Arundhati Roy had once said about this, she said, I think, and I'm paraphrasing here. She said the starting blocks are genuine, but the race is fictional. So something to that effect, actually.
So I think it's over. So let's wind up the session. Thank you, Matthew,
Thank you
for coming
sir.
here for KLF 2020. See you later.
Yeah, thank you.